kind of pretty much wore out everything that came in the packet. The blades didn't like it, but basically just got that in there, ran that all the way around. Like so. I didn't really know what was going on with this bit here. I thought this sort of flange here was actually a separate part that had been glued onto the two halves of the rudder. But now I think it's actually, it could still be. I haven't really exactly got to the bottom of it, but I think it was actually just two halves. That bit moulded and that bit belonged on there like that. Been through a couple of these blades. I eventually bought a carbide blade, which is the one you need really, fibreglass. Just the other ones don't really last. Yeah, just to save all the time and effort, it's just a lot of forget. So what I've done here is I've put some divinicell down. I've glued it down with epoxy and Q-cell and just sort of run a little fillet around there. I can see that it's already starting to stiffen up quite well. So what I intend to do now is I'll get this the surface of this about 1 millimetre below between these 2 points here, and then we're going to put some carbon over the top. So just got to, I think I'll use the router to figure that out, to try and get that down to the height that I want. Okay, so we've pretty much completed the putting the divinicell on the rudder. I'll just move that over there so you can have a look. So basically, I've just mixed up some Q-cell and some epoxy, glued all that down, and then shaved the top of it off. So it's around about 1 to 2 millimeters below the two surfaces. Basically, when they go back together, they should be able to go together like that, and there's, yep, they're not sort of sitting up at all proud, so they'll go together nicely. I've got my strips of carbon ready here. I'm going to put down 2 strips on both sides. So I just, but first of all, I'm going to coat this with just a tack coat, so that when I put the carbon on, it's going to stick down. So I'm just going to mix up some, just a tack coat for that. So basically, what I've got here is I went out and bought a $10 scales from the department store. It's probably a good idea not to use the wife's kitchen one. It'll probably cost you a lot more than $10 if she finds out. So we'll just go ahead and mix that up. So just start off on the scale and you can zero that. Probably mix up about 100 grams all up, so that's about 66 of this one. Just pour it nice and slow, otherwise, because it does take a little while for the scale to kind of catch up as you're pouring it. So I've got 62 there, so that means I need another 31, makes it about 94. As I said, just take it nice and easy when you're pouring this. Give the scale a chance to catch up. The 94 I'm looking for. Right, good. So yeah, give this a quick mix. Lovely stuff, isn't it? Okay. So we're going to brush somewhere. You don't want to leave it in the pot too long because it actually gets quite hot very quickly, as I found out the other day. This was what did I do? What did I do with it? No, not that one. I'll find it later. Right. You can always mix up more if you don't have enough. It's better to have not enough than too much, because if you have too much then... Right, well let's sort of wet it out. May as well keep going. No rest for the wicked. I was hoping to do a race this Sunday, but no, it's now Friday. I'm pushing it. Okay, let's make some more. So I've just laid this first layer of carbon cloth over the top. It's just the resin underneath just gone a little bit tacky. It's sort of still to the point where you can kind of still move it a little bit without sticking completely, but it does help actually stick the cloth down, and just sort of then you can kind of go around and work out all the air bubbles, get rid of, you know, anywhere there's going to be an air bubble, so you can get that conforming as best as you can to the shape. So just just try and get the cloth in contact with all the sticky stuff. Smooth out any little air bubbles. And once that's done, we'll mix up a batch of resin and we'll coat that, and then we'll stick the other one on top. So what I did yesterday is I basically finished off with my 2 carbon ribs on either half. I'm sorry I didn't film it, but it was a bit chaotic yesterday when I actually did this. So basically I got my rib in there, my divinicell rib, and then on 2 layers of carbon fibre over the top. That, as you saw me sort of, using the router to get it down just below the level. And that was the idea, so that when I put the 2 halves together I could glue them along the rib, which I did. I mixed up some Q-cell and some epoxy and stuck that on top, and then I decided, well, I've got to keep going here, and whether there was, the option was with the foam was to try and pour the foam in afterwards, which I figured probably wouldn't work and would have been a bit difficult trying to pour it down from the top with a couple of holes there. So I figured, well, I'll bite the bullet, and so I mixed up 2-pack high density foam and basically just poured it in either side of the rib. I did a little test beforehand, kind of that, I think it was, what was that, 30 grams I think it was. That's 30 grams of foam, how much it expanded. And so I tried that, give me a bit of a guide as to how much to use. It's, as you can see, it's a pretty high density stuff, pretty strong. Anyway, so I just poured it in there thinking I had the right amount. The idea was to get these clamps, just clamp it up like that around there. It was a fairly warm day yesterday, and I think when you kind of mix up this sort of foam stuff in small quantities, you know, you get that sort of reaction. But in a larger quantity and on a warmer day, well, I think it probably expanded to a little bit more than that. So basically what happened is that all hell broke loose. It started to spray out, you know, come out everywhere, and the little clips just flew straight off, so that became useless. So the only thing I could think of doing was I took it out there, put it on the grass. I got some containers, you know, buckets and a wheelie bin, and just filled them all up with water and put them on the top to keep it all weighted down. You know, it kind of worked. Probably in hindsight, I should have set up, you know, actually done it out there on the grass, put some sandbags down. And I actually noticed one of these. I reckon if you had a few of these, probably about 15 bags of these, and go along the bottom, so this you can put it on top and then put another 2 bags on top all the way along. That would have been, probably would have turned out perfect. But it is what it is. I got it pretty close. I got a little bit of a gap here. You know, it's not too bad. And one thing I do know is that basically that foam has pretty much filled up all that, except probably the last little bit up the top here, which I've got a little tiny bit left over of the foam, and there's still a hole. There's a couple of holes on the top here. That's how they originally filled it up, I'd imagine. I'll just top up that last little bit. So I'm just going to remove all this sort of stuff that you can see, all the lawn, and one of my other reasons was for doing it that way was the carbon. Once I got the carbon down there, I got no way of vacuum bagging, but I figured, well, if I put the pressure in there on the foam, that's going to expand onto the carbon and basically push the carbon down, which is really the same as vacuum bagging, and to boot, the chemical reaction of the foam going off creates all the heat. So basically it's kind of like autoclaving it. So, you know, I reckon maybe, you know, just probably done the right thing. Just need to clean this up, and then probably just a little bit of fairing on the back here. I think I'll put a little bit of glass, just a glass tape on the, you know, all around the edges there, just to sort of hold it all together. A bit more fairing, a bit of glassing in the